A humble woman saved the child, not knowing he was the son of a lonely widowed millionaire. The gentle rain barely touched the ground, as if afraid to disturb anyone. Central Park was nearly empty that gray afternoon, except for a woman crouched beside a bench, trying to protect the contents of a paper bag. Her name was Sarah Mitchell, and she carried with her the simple routine of someone who had learned to survive on little but dream of much. "I can't let this get wet. Father Murphy will think I did it on purpose," she murmured, smiling to herself as she watched the aluminum foil valiantly resist the water. Every Saturday she brought homemade apple pies to the community center at St. Mary's Parish. She wasn't a professional baker, but she had learned that a small gesture could change someone's entire day. While tucking the bag under the bench, she heard the muffled sound of hurried footsteps. She looked back and saw a boy no older than 5 running toward the artificial pond that bordered the walking path. There were no adults around, no supervision, just him and the wet edge of slippery stones. "Hey, careful!" Sarah shouted, but it was already too late. The boy slipped, and in the blink of an eye, fell into the shallow but churning water, struggling to keep his head above the surface. Sarah dropped everything. Without thinking, she kicked off her shoes, ran across the soaked grass, and dove into the freezing water, grabbing the boy's trembling body before he could sink. Her heart beat faster than the current, and the sound of the world disappeared for a few seconds. "It's okay. You're safe," she whispered, breathless, as she held him against her chest. The boy coughed, scared but unharmed. She lifted him to the side, checked that he was conscious, and wrapped him in her own coat. Only then did she notice that a man in a business suit was running toward them, shouting the child's name. T looked desperate, his eyes wide and his face pale, but Sarah was already standing, ready to disappear without explanations. Wait, what happened here?" he asked, kneeling beside the boy. "He slipped. I just pulled him out of the water," Sarah said, her voice trembling as she backed away. "He's fine. He just needs to get warm." Before the man could say anything more, she turned and walked away. Just like that. No names, no requests. Without realizing it, she had saved the son of one of the richest men in the city. His name was Alexander Blackwood, and that moment would change all their lives. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where a simple gesture changed everything? If you're curious to know how this story continues, hit the bell and subscribe to the channel, because what comes next will surprise you. Alexander Blackwood wasn't known for his patience. At 35, he ran a business empire with an iron fist and never showed any weakness. But when he arrived home that afternoon, carrying Tommy in his arms, something had changed in his stone chest. "Dad, she smelled like flowers," Tommy said, still wrapped in towels, and her hands were soft, like Mom's. Alexander stopped in the middle of the staircase. It had been 3 years since Emma died in the accident, and the boy had never compared anyone to his mother. Anyone. "What do you mean, son?" "The lady who saved me. She smelled like jasmine, and talked to me like Mom, quietly, like I was important." Alexander sat on the bed next to the boy. After Emma's death, he had built walls around his heart to protect himself and his son from pain. Work, money, power, all of that kept the world at a safe distance. But now, "Dad, can you find her? I want to thank her. We don't even know her name, Tommy." "Then we'll find out. You always say you can find out anything." And it was true. Alexander Blackwood hadn't gotten where he was by accepting no for an answer. The next morning, he called Richard Martinez, his head of security. "I need you to find someone." A woman, about 25 years old, brown hair, was at Central Park yesterday afternoon. "She saved my son." "Do you have more information?" "She wears jasmine perfume." And Alexander hesitated. "According to Tommy, she has hands like clouds." Richard laughed, but stopped when he saw his boss's serious expression. "I see, I'll look into it." Meanwhile, Sarah was trying to return to her routine. She worked her normal shift at the community center, caring for the elderly and children, but her mind kept returning to the boy from the park. There was something in his blue eyes that moved her deeply, a sadness that didn't match his age. "You're different today, Mrs. Carmen tells her, one of the center's coordinators. Did something happen to you? Yesterday, I helped a boy. It wasn't a big deal, but I can't stop thinking about him. Sometimes God puts people in our path for a reason, child. Sarah smiled. Mrs. Carmen always had a divine explanation for everything. But that night, when she arrived at her small apartment, she found Jessica, her best friend, waiting at the door with a worried expression. Sarah, you need to see this. Jessica showed her her phone. On the screen was a blurry photo of Sarah leaving the park, with the headline, "Mysterious Woman Saves Tycoon's Son." How did they? It looks like someone filmed it from afar. The boy is the son of Alexander Blackwood, that millionaire businessman. Sarah, they're looking for you. Sarah's heart raced. She knew the name, Ornedupu. Alexander Blackwood was famous for his coldness in business, and for never giving interviews. A powerful, unreachable man, and now the father of the boy she had saved. I don't want anything to do with this, Jessica. I did what anyone would do, but he wants to find you. They say he's offered a reward to anyone who brings information about you. Sarah sat heavily on the couch. Her simple, organized life was about to be turned upside down. What do I do? Can you hide forever? Or you can face the situation. That night, Sarah could barely sleep. Through her bedroom window, she could see the city lights, and somewhere out there, a powerful man was looking for her. Did he just want to thank her, or was there something more? The answer would come sooner than she thought. Richard Martinez was efficient. In 2 days he had Sarah's name, her address, and even her work schedule. He delivered the report to Alexander on a Monday morning. Sarah Mitchell, 26 years old, volunteer nurse at St. Mary's Community Center, orphaned mother, lives alone, also works part-time at a private clinic, no criminal record or debts. A ordinary life, ordinary, Alexander repeated, studying the photo Richard had taken of her. Sarah was smiling at someone outside the frame, and there was a light in her eyes that he hadn't seen in a long time. Do you want me to bring her here? No. Alexander put away the report. I'll go see her. Richard raised his eyebrows. In 10 years working for Alexander, he had never seen him personally go after anyone. Are you sure, boss? Tommy won't stop talking about her. I need to know what kind of person she is. But Alexander was lying to himself. It wasn't just curiosity about Sarah's character. It was something he couldn't explain. A need to see again the woman who had brought hope back to his son's eyes, and maybe a hint of hope in his own as well. Sarah was finishing organizing the medicines in the community center's pharmacy when Father Miguel entered with a strange expression on his face. Sarah, there's someone who wants to see you. Who? A man. He says he's the father of the boy you saved. Sarah's heart stopped. She knew this moment would come, but she didn't expect it to be so soon. Where is he? In the meeting room. Sarah. The priest hesitated. Be careful. Men with a lot of power sometimes forget that not everything can be bought. Sarah nodded and walked down the hallway, her hands trembling slightly. She stopped at the door, took a deep breath, and entered. Alexander Blackwood stood by the window, looking at the courtyard where some children were playing. He was taller than she remembered, his dark hair combed back, and he wore a suit that probably cost more than her annual salary. When he turned, his gray eyes studied her with an intensity that made her step back. Are you Sarah Mitchell? Yes. I'm Alexander Blackwood. Tommy is my son. They looked at each other in silence for a few seconds. Sarah noticed he looked different from the desperate man she had seen in the park, more controlled, more dangerous. How did you find me? It wasn't difficult. You became a celebrity after what happened. Sarah crossed her arms. If you came to offer me money, you can save us both some time. I don't want anything. An almost imperceptible smile passed over Alexander's lips. Interesting. Most people I know would start talking about rewards. I'm not most people you know. I can see that. Alexander approached, and Sarah smelled the expensive cologne he wore, wood and spices, completely different from the simple world she lived in. Tommy won't stop asking about you. He wants to see you again. I don't think that's a good idea. Why not? Sarah hesitated. How could she explain that people like them lived in different worlds? That she knew from experience that rich people saw poor people as charity projects, or worse, as temporary entertainment. Because I know how this story ends, Mr. Blackwood. You feel indebted, you want to do something for the common folk, but when your conscience is clear, you'll go back to your life, and I'll stay here in my place. Alexander studied her for a long moment. You have a very firm opinion of me, without knowing me. And you have a very firm opinion of me, without knowing me, she replied. For the first time in years, Alexander found himself face to face with someone who wasn't intimidated by him. It was refreshing. Tommy drew you, he said, pulling a folded paper from his pocket. Do you want to see it? Before Sarah could answer, he unfolded the drawing. It was rough, like all children's drawings, but it showed a long-haired woman next to a boy, both smiling. In the corner, in uneven letters, was written, "My park angel." Sarah felt her heart squeeze. He called you an angel, Alexander murmured. Since his mother died, he doesn't trust strangers. But you managed to reach him. How did she die? Sarah asked quietly. Alexander's face tensed. Car accident. Tommy was in the back seat. He saw everything. He paused. Since then, he's had nightmares about water. Ironic, isn't it? You saved him from what he fears most. Sarah looked at the drawing again. On paper, Tommy and she looked like a happy family, something she had always dreamed of having. What do you want from me? Have dinner with us. Tonight. Let Tommy thank you personally. And I promise that after that I won't bother you. Sarah looked at him closely, searching for signs of falsehood, but all she saw was a worried father trying to make his son happy. One dinner. Is that all? That's all, she sighed. Okay. But I choose the place. Alexander blinked, surprised. What do you mean? If you want me to have dinner with you, it'll be where I feel comfortable. There's a pizzeria in my neighborhood. Nothing fancy, but the food is good. For the first time, Alexander Blackwood laughed for real. Deal. Now I want to know, do you think Sarah did the right thing by accepting the invitation, or do you think she should have kept her distance? Tell me in the comments what you would have done in her place. Tony's Pizzeria wasn't exactly the kind of place Alexander Blackwood usually dined. The tables were plastic, the chairs made noise when dragged across the floor, and the menu was taped to the wall. But when he arrived at 7 o'clock sharp with Tommy holding his hand, something strange happened. He felt normal. Dad, is this it? Tommy asked, looking around curiously. This is it. Sarah was waiting for them at a corner table. She had changed from her work uniform into a simple blue blouse and jeans. No heavy makeup or expensive clothes. Still, when she smiled upon seeing Tommy, Alexander felt something move in his chest, something he thought had died along with Emma. Tommy. Sarah stood up and knelt to be at the boy's height. How are you? Good. I made you a drawing. Tommy pulled a crumpled paper from his pocket. It was different from the first. In this one he and Sarah appeared in the park, but now there was a big yellow sun in the sky. It's beautiful. Can I keep it? Yes, Dad says you live far away. Not so far, Sarah said, looking at Alexander. Do you want pizza? During dinner, Tommy didn't stop talking. He talked about school, his toys, how he had dreamed about Sarah every night since the park, and for the first time since Emma's death, Alexander saw his son truly happy. Do you have children? Tommy asked while eating. No, sweetheart. Why not? Tommy, Alexander gently scolded. No, it's okay, Sarah said. I haven't found someone special to start a family with yet. My dad doesn't have someone special either. It's just me. Alexander felt his face heat up. Tommy, eat your pizza. Sarah smiled. Your dad takes very good care of you. Sometimes he gets sad and doesn't know I see him. But since you appeared, he smiles more. The silence that followed was broken by Alexander. He's right. Since that day in the park, something has changed. Sarah looked into his eyes. How has it changed? Tommy started dreaming again. Before he had nightmares every night. Now he draws you as an angel and sleeps through the night. And you? The question caught Alexander off guard. Me what? Have you started dreaming again too? He was silent for a moment too long. Then he lowered his voice. I stopped dreaming 3 years ago. I don't know if I can go back. Sarah reached across the table and touched his hand. It was a brief touch, but Alexander felt like he had been electrocuted. Sometimes we start slowly, she said. One day at a time. After dinner, Alexander insisted on driving Sarah home. His car, a luxurious black sedan, stood out among the simple streets of her neighborhood. You can stop here, Sarah said, when they were 2 blocks from her apartment building. Why? Because I don't need the neighbors creating stories about me. Alexander stopped the car. Tommy had fallen asleep in the back seat. Sarah, he began. I know I promised that after dinner I wouldn't bother you anymore. But Tommy has connected with you in a way I haven't seen since Emma died. He needs you. He needs you. Sarah turned to look at him. And you, do you need me? The question hung in the air between them. Alexander opened his mouth to answer, but no sound came out. I'm not a substitute babysitter, Alexander. And I'm not a therapist. I'm just a person trying to live her life. I know, but nothing. Sarah opened the car door. If you want me to see Tommy again, you're going to have to be honest about what you really want. She got out of the car and walked away without looking back. Alexander stayed there, watching her disappear around the corner, his heart pounding wildly. In the back seat, Tommy opened his eyes. Dad, do you like her? Alexander looked at his son in the rearview mirror. Why do you ask that? Because you look different when she's around, like Mom used to make you look. The next morning, Sarah woke up to someone knocking on the door. She opened it to find a delivery man with a huge bouquet of jasmine flowers. Sarah Mitchell. Yes, delivery for the lady. Sarah took the card that accompanied the flowers. In firm, masculine handwriting, it said, You asked me what I really want. The answer is, you, Alexander. Sarah sat on the couch, looking at the flowers. Her small apartment was perfumed with the scent that Tommy had recognized in her. For the first time in a long time, she allowed herself to imagine what it would be like for someone to love her, not just for her charitable actions or her kindness, but for herself. The phone rang. It was an unknown number. Hello, Sarah? It's Alexander. Did you get the flowers? Yes, I got them. And Sarah closed her eyes. And I'm scared. Of me? Of us? Of what this could become? There was a pause. Then Alexander said, I'm scared too. I've been so long without feeling anything that I've forgotten what it feels like. But when I'm with you, I remember. Remember what? What it's like to be happy. Sarah smiled, even though he couldn't see it. Is Tommy there? He's at school. Why? Because I want to see you. Just you, without the boy as an excuse. Alexander laughed softly. Do you want to see me? I want to meet the man behind the worried father, the man who sends jasmine flowers to a woman he barely knows. Where do you want to meet me? Sarah looked out the window. Outside, life continued its normal pace. People going to work, children going to school, street vendors calling out their wares. There's a cafe on the street where I work. Corner Cafe. Can you find it? Yes. At 2. I'll be there. After hanging up, Sarah stared at the flowers. She was about to cross a line of no return, but for the first time in a long time, she wanted to take the risk. Corner Cafe was small and cozy, with wooden tables and a counter where Mrs. Rose served the best coffee in the neighborhood. When Alexander walked in at 2 o'clock sharp, he stood out like a diamond among stones, not just because of his expensive clothes, but because of the confident posture that came naturally to him. Sarah was already sitting at a table near the window. She stood up when she saw him. You managed to find it. It wasn't difficult. He looked around. It's cozy. It's my refuge. When the world becomes too heavy, I come here. They sat down. Mrs. Rose approached, wiping her hands on her apron. Sarah, honey, who's the gentleman? Mrs. Rose, this is Alexander. Alexander, this is Mrs. Rose, the cafe owner. Pleased to meet you, Alexander said, extending his hand. Mrs. Rose shook it. but her eyes scrutinized Alexander from top to bottom. "You're not from around here, are you?" "No, ma'am." "Well, what are you having?" They ordered coffee and carrot cake. When Mrs. Rose walked away, Sarah laughed. "She's protective. I can see that. She looked at me like I was a criminal. To her, any man who's interested in me is suspicious until proven otherwise. And what do I have to do to prove it?" Sarah studied him. "Be honest. Tell me who you really are." Alexander took a sip of coffee. "Who I am is complicated. I have time," he sighed. "I grew up poor, Sarah. My father worked in a factory. My mother cleaned houses. When I was 15, my father died in a workplace accident. The company refused to pay compensation. That's when I decided I would never be vulnerable again." Sarah listened in silence. "I studied at night, worked during the day, got a scholarship to university. I built my company from scratch, and when I finally had everything I thought I wanted, I met Emma." His voice became serious. "Emma was different. She saw through all the masks I wore. She reminded me of who I was before I became this hardened version of myself." "Were you happy?" "Very happy. For the first time in my life, I had a real family, someone who loved me not for what I had, but for who I was." He paused. "When she died, I swore I would never let anyone get that close again. It hurts too much to lose." Sarah reached across the table and touched his hand. "But you haven't lost. You still have Tommy." "Yes, but I was so afraid of losing him too, that I ended up distancing myself from him, until you appeared. I didn't do anything special." "Yes, you did. You showed me what I was missing by locking myself in an ivory tower." Alexander turned his hand and intertwined his fingers with hers. "Sarah, I don't know what this is between us, but I do know I don't want it to end." Sarah felt her heart race. "Alexander, I know we're from different worlds. I know it's complicated, but since I met you, I can sleep at night without nightmares. Since I met you, I remember what it's like to really smile. What if it doesn't work? What if we end up hurt? What if it does work? What if we're happy?" Sarah looked at their intertwined hands. Hers were simple, with short nails and calluses from work. His were soft, well cared for, with an expensive ring on his pinky finger. But there, at that little cafe table, they fit perfectly. "I feel something too," she admitted. "Since that day in the park, but I'm scared. Alexander, people like you don't stay with people like me. What kind of person do you think I am? Rich, powerful, used to getting everything you want, and what kind of person do you think you are?" Sarah hesitated. "Simple, ordinary, with nothing special to offer." Alexander stood up and walked around the table, kneeling beside her chair. Mrs. Rose and the other customers stared, but he didn't care. "Sarah Mitchell," he said, taking her hands. "You saved my son from the water, but you saved me from something much worse, a life without love. You're brave, kind, authentic. You make pies for unknown elderly people, and wear cheap jasmine perfume that's worth more than anything I've ever bought. You're everything special in the world." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "Alexander, give me a chance. Give us a chance." Sarah looked around. Mrs. Rose smiled approvingly. The other customers whispered among themselves, but they were the warm whispers of those watching a romantic movie. "Get up," she said. "People are watching." Alexander stood up but didn't let go of her hands. "So what?" Sarah also stood up. "Then yes. Yes. I want to try. I want to see how far this goes." Alexander smiled, the first real smile she had seen from him. Kissed her right there, in the middle of Corner Cafe, while Mrs. Rose applauded, and the other customers joined in. When they separated, Sarah was red but happy. "What now?" "Now," Alexander said, "we take it slow, one day at a time. You, me and Tommy. An unlikely family. The best kind." In the following weeks, Sarah discovered what it was like to date a man like Alexander Blackwood. He picked her up from work in expensive cars that made neighbors peek through curtains. He took her and Tommy to dinner at restaurants, where she had to Google how to pronounce the names of the dishes. But gradually, he also discovered her world. He learned to make popcorn in the kitchen, when they went to watch a movie at Sarah's house, he discovered that Sunday bakery pizza could taste better than food from any Michelin-starred chef. And for the first time Tommy had something he had never had, a mother figure who loved him without ulterior motives. "Sarah," Tommy said one afternoon, while she helped him with homework, "are you going to marry my dad?" Sarah almost choked on her coffee. "Why do you ask that?" "Because he's happy when you're here. And so am I. And if I marry him, what do you think will happen?" Tommy thought seriously. "I think we'll be a real family. You'll live with us, make cake on Sundays, and give me little brothers and sisters." Sarah laughed. "You've thought of everything, haven't you? I just want you to be together. Do you promise you won't leave?" Sarah hugged the boy. "I promise I'll fight for us. For you, for me, and for your dad. But not all love stories are a bed of roses." And Sarah was about to discover that in real-life fairy tales, there's always a villain waiting to burst onto the scene. Victoria Hartwell always believed she should have married Alexander instead of her sister Emma. At 32, blonde, elegant, and with beauty as cold as marble, Victoria had spent the last 3 years patiently waiting for Alexander to overcome his grief and finally see her as the ideal woman to complete his life. When she learned, through high society gossip, that Alexander was being seen with an ordinary woman, Victoria felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. "This can't be happening," she murmured, looking at the photos her assistant had obtained. Sarah, getting out of Alexander's car. Sarah, playing with Tommy in the park. Sarah, kissing Alexander outside a simple cafe. Marina, her private assistant, waited for instructions. "What do you want me to do?" Victoria studied the photos with calculating eyes. "I want to know everything about this Sarah Mitchell. Where she works, where she lives, who she associates with. Especially if there's anything in her past that Alexander doesn't know. What if there's nothing?" A cold smile passed over Victoria's lips. "There's always something, Marina. You just have to know where to look." Meanwhile, Sarah was living the happiest days of her life. Alexander had become a constant presence in her routine. They had dinner together 3 times a week. Tommy spent weekends with her, and for the first time, Sarah felt part of a family. One Friday afternoon, Alexander showed up at the community center just as she was leaving. "Surprise! What are you doing here?" "Tommy is staying at a friend's house tonight. I thought we could have some time alone." Sarah smiled. "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." They drove through the city until they reached an area Sarah didn't know more luxurious, with expensive restaurants and luxury hotels. Alexander stopped in front of the Riverside Hotel. "Alexander, I can't afford this kind of place. You're not paying for anything. I'm treating. It's not about money, it's about me not feeling comfortable." Alexander turned off the car and turned to her. "Sarah, I know you're not used to these things, but I want to show you my world too, just like you've shown me yours. What if I say something wrong? What if I use the wrong fork, or don't know how to behave?" Alexander cupped her face in his hands. "Then you'll say something wrong, and use the wrong fork. And I'll love you just the same." It was the first time the word love appeared between them. Sarah felt her heart stop. "Do you love me?" "Yes, I love you, Sarah Mitchell. I love your kindness. I love your authenticity. I love how you make my son smile. I love how you make me feel alive again." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. "I love you too." They kissed there in the hotel parking lot, like 2 teenagers in love. Dinner was magical. Sarah discovered that when she was with Alexander, it didn't matter that other customers looked at her curiously. She felt beautiful, special, worthy of being there. "Can I ask you something?" she said, while they ate dessert. "Anything. What does your family think of me?" Alexander hesitated. "My family is just Tommy. My parents are dead. I don't have siblings." "What about Emma's family?" "Victoria, her sister, is still part of our lives. She's very present in Tommy's life." "Does she know about me?" "Not yet." Sarah frowned. "Why not?" "Because I wanted to make sure this was serious, before involving other people. And now you're sure." Alexander took her hand across the table. "I am. More than ever." Saturday morning, Sarah was playing with Tommy in the park when a blonde woman approached. She wore expensive clothes and had the posture of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "You must be Sarah." Sarah stood up. "Yes, and you are Victoria Hartwell, Emma's sister, Alexander's late wife." The air grew tense. Tommy, who was distracted with a toy car, didn't notice the change in atmosphere. "Nice to meet you," Sarah said politely. "I imagine it is." Victoria smiled, but there was no warmth in her smile. "Could we chat in private?" Sarah looked at Tommy. "Of course." "Tommy, stay there playing. Don't go anywhere." "Okay." They walked a few meters away. Victoria got straight to the point. "I know you and Alexander are getting to know each other." "That's right. It's charming, really. But I wonder if you have any idea what you're getting into." Sarah crossed her arms. "What do you mean?" "Alexander is a very wealthy man, Sarah. And great wealth brings great interest. Have you stopped to think why a woman like you would attract the attention of a man like him?" "I'm sorry, but I don't understand." "A woman like me?" Victoria laughed, as if explaining something obvious to a child. "Honey, you're charming, but let's be realistic. You work as a volunteer, live in a simple neighborhood, don't have formal higher education. What exactly do you have to offer a man who can have any woman he wants?" Sarah felt as if she had been slapped. "I love him, and he loves me."
Love or pity?
Victoria tilted her head. "You saved his son. He feels grateful, maybe even guilty for having so much when you have so little. But gratitude isn't love, Sarah. You don't know anything about what's between us. I know more than you think. I know he still has nightmares about Emma. I know her room has remained untouched for 3 years. I know he still wears his wedding ring." Sarah instinctively looked at Alexander's hands in her memory. It was true, he still wore his wedding ring. "He's confused, Sarah. Vulnerable. And you appeared at just the right moment to take advantage of it."
Ols.
"I'm not taking advantage of anything."
Ols.
"Maybe not consciously, but the result is the same."
Ols.
Victoria moved closer.
The souls' tools.
Victoria moved closer. "Let me be clear. Alexander and Tommy are my family. The only family I have left from my sister, and I'll protect them from anyone who tries to take advantage of them." "Is that a threat?" "It's advice. Between friends." Victoria smiled again. "Think about it, Sarah. Do you really think you can make Alexander happy, or are you just filling a temporary void?" Victoria walked away, leaving Sarah standing there, her heart heavy and her mind full of doubts. "Aunt Victoria." Tommy ran toward the woman. "Did you meet Sarah?"
Yes, darling.
"She's interesting. She's amazing. She makes the best cakes in the world and teaches me to draw flowers." Victoria stroked the boy's hair. "That's nice, love. But you know no one can replace your mommy, right?" "I know, but Sarah doesn't try to replace Mom. She's different." Victoria forced a smile. "Of course she is." When Alexander came to pick up Tommy, Sarah was too quiet. "Did something happen?" "Your sister-in-law stopped by." Alexander's face tensed. "Victoria, what did she want?" "To meet the woman you're seeing." "And what did she tell you?" Sarah hesitated. Should she tell him about Victoria's insinuations, about the doubt she had planted? "Not much. We just talked." But Alexander had known Victoria long enough to know she never made innocent conversations. "Sarah, be honest with me. What did she say?" "She asked me some questions about our social differences." "What kind of questions?" Sarah sighed. "She wanted to know if I had any idea what I was getting into. If I understood your world." Alexander clenched his fists. Victoria had no right to do that. But she wasn't wrong, was she? Sarah looked at him directly. "We are from different worlds, Alexander. And maybe what? Maybe she's right that I'm just filling a void." Alexander grabbed her by the shoulders. "Sarah, look at me. Victoria is jealous. She always thought she had rights over me and Tommy. After Emma's death, she can't accept that I could love someone else." "You still wear your wedding ring." The sentence came out before Sarah could control it. Alexander looked at his hand.
"It's true. I still wear it. Why?"
Alexander was silent for a long moment. Because I was afraid. Afraid that taking off the ring would mean I was betraying Emma's memory. And now I realize that Emma wouldn't want me to be alone forever. She would want me to be happy. He took off the wedding ring and put it in his pocket. You would like her, Sarah. Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. Are you sure? Absolutely. Because you do the same thing she did. You remind me who I really am. They hugged there, in the park where it all began, while Tommy played without realizing that the adults were resolving matters of the heart. But Victoria wasn't one to give up easily. If she couldn't convince Sarah to stay away, she would try another path. The following Monday, she met Alexander for lunch. We need to talk, she told him. When they met at the restaurant they used to frequent when Emma was alive. If it's about Sarah, there's nothing to talk about. It's about Tommy. That made Alexander pause. What about Tommy? Don't you think it's going too fast? A strange woman suddenly becoming part of your son's life. Sarah isn't a stranger. She saved his life. And you're grateful. I understand. But Alexander, do you really know this woman? Do you know where she comes from? Who the people she associates with are? Victoria, please. I had her investigated. Alexander stopped with his fork in the air. You did what? It was necessary. Tommy is also my nephew, and I have the right to worry about him. You had no right to investigate anyone. Victoria pulled a folder from her purse. Sarah Mitchell, orphaned mother, at 16, unknown father, raised by her grandmother in poverty, worked since she was a teenager to support herself. So what? That only proves she's hardworking and independent. She had a 2-year relationship with Carlos Mendoza, a married man who promised to leave his wife for her. He supported her financially in exchange for favors. Alexander's blood ran cold. That's a lie. It's all here. Photos, bank statements showing the deposits he made into her account. Alexander, your precious Sarah was a married man's mistress. Alexander stood up from the table. Even if it were true, and I doubt it, that was in her past. It has nothing to do with who she is today. Yes, it does. It shows a pattern. She gets involved with rich and powerful men. Don't you see? She's an opportunist. Enough, Victoria. Emma was right about you. Victoria said, venom in her voice. She always said you were naive when it came to people, that you always believed the best in people, even when all the signs showed otherwise. Don't you dare use Emma to justify your sick obsession with controlling my life. Alexander left the restaurant, leaving Victoria alone with her evil plans. But the seeds of doubt had already been planted. If you liked this story, give me a like so I know. And tell me, do you think Alexander should confront Sarah about her past, or should he trust what he feels for her? Alexander arrived home that night distressed. Victoria's words echoed in his mind, mixed with images of Sarah, her genuine smile, the way she cared for Tommy, the innocence in her eyes when he kissed her for the first time. Tommy was doing homework at the kitchen table. Dad, is Sarah having dinner with us tonight? Not tonight, son. Why not? Did you fight? Tommy's innocent question hit Alexander in the heart. We didn't fight. Dad just needs to think about some things. What kind of things? How do you explain to a 6-year-old that sometimes adults complicate what should be simple? Adult things. Tommy frowned. If you're sad about Sarah, why don't you talk to her? The teacher always says that talking solves problems. Sometimes it's not that simple. But Sarah is good, Dad. I can feel it. Tommy tapped his chest over his heart. Inside, just like I felt with Mom. Alexander knelt next to his son. What if I discover things about her past that I didn't know? Things that might not be so good? Tommy thought for a moment, with the seriousness that only children can handle. The past is like when I broke your favorite vase last year. I did something bad, but you forgave me because you said what matters is who I am now, not what I did before. Children's wisdom was sometimes clearer than all adult reasoning. You're right, Alexander said, hugging his son. You're always right. That night, when Tommy was already asleep, Alexander called Sarah. Hello, she answered, and he could tell by her voice that something was wrong. Hello, are you okay? Yes, I'm just tired. Sarah, I need to see you. Can we meet tomorrow? Of course. Did something happen? We'll talk in person. Okay. After hanging up, Sarah stared at the phone. There was something in Alexander's voice that worried her. Victoria's words came back to her. Gratitude isn't love. What if Victoria was right? What if Alexander was starting to realize that they really were incompatible? They met at the same cafe, where they had their first date. Mrs. Rose greeted them with her usual warmth, but noticed the tension between them. The usual, please, Alexander said. When they were alone, Sarah went straight to the point. What's wrong? Victoria showed me some things about your past. Sarah's heart stopped. What kind of things? About Carlos Mendoza. Sarah closed her eyes. It was what she feared most, that her past would come back to haunt her just when she was finally happy. What did she tell you? That you had a relationship, that he was married, that he supported you financially. Sarah was silent for a long moment. Then she took a deep breath. It's true. Alexander felt like he had been punched in the stomach, even though he expected the confirmation. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew how you would react, how anyone would. Sarah, let me explain. Please. She looked into his eyes. I was 22 when I met Carlos. My grandmother had died. I was alone in the world, with 2 jobs to pay rent for a room in a boarding house. He showed up at the clinic where I worked as an aide. Sarah paused, reliving painful memories. He was kind, attentive. He told me he was separated from his wife, that he was just waiting for the divorce. I was young, naive, and I believed him. And the money? When the rent went up and I couldn't pay it, he offered to help. He said it was temporary, until I got a better job. I accepted because the alternative was living on the street. Alexander listened in silence. It took me almost a year to discover that he had never separated from his wife, that she didn't know I existed. When I found out, I broke up immediately and returned all the money I could. And why didn't you tell me before? Sarah laughed bitterly. Because I knew you would think exactly what you're thinking now, that I'm an opportunist, that I'm with you for your money. That's not what I'm thinking, isn't it? Then what are you thinking? Alexander remained silent. Actually, he didn't know what to think. Part of him realized that Sarah had been the victim of a manipulative man. Another part wondered if there were other things she hadn't told him. I'm thinking you should have trusted me, he said finally. And I'm thinking that maybe Victoria is right. Maybe we really are incompatible. Sarah, no, Alexander. Maybe it's for the best. You can go back to your world of certainties, where everyone has a clean past without complications. Sarah stood up to leave, but Alexander grabbed her hand. Wait, what for? So you can judge me a little more? So I can apologize? Sarah stopped, surprised. You're right. I should have trusted you. In us. Instead, I let Victoria plant seeds of doubt in my head. And now I want you to tell me everything. Not because I doubt you, but because I want to know every part of your story.
The good and the bad. Sarah sat back down. Are you sure? Absolutely. For the next hour, Sarah told him everything. About her mother, who died of cancer because she couldn't afford treatment. About the father she never knew. About the difficult years caring for her sick grandmother. About Carlos and the pain of discovering she had been deceived. About how that experience made her distrust rich and powerful men. And that's why you resisted me so much at first, Alexander concluded. Yes, I was afraid of making the same mistake. And now I know you're different. You chose me for who I am, not for what you can make of me. Alexander held her hands across the table. Sarah, I don't care about your past. We all have stories we're not proud of. What matters is who you are today. Who am I today? A brave woman who saved my son and taught me to love again. A woman who bakes pies for elderly people and wears cheap jasmine perfume. A woman I love very much. Sarah smiled through tears. I love you too. Then don't let Victoria win. Don't let her destroy what we have. What does she want? Control. She always thought she had rights over me and Tommy. But she's wrong. Alexander paused. Sarah,
I have a proposal for you. What kind of proposal? Marry me. Sarah blinked, thinking she had heard wrong. What marry me? You, Tommy and me. A real family. Alexander, are you sure? After everything that happened today. I'm more sure than ever. Victoria did all this drama precisely because she knows what we have is real, and I'm not going to let anyone destroy that. Sarah looked at him, seeing the man she had fallen in love with. Not for the money, not for the power, but for the way he looked at her, as if she were the most precious thing in the world. Yes, she whispered. Yes, yes, I accept. I want to marry you. Alexander stood up, walked around the table, and kissed her right there, in Corner Cafe, while Mrs. Rose applauded in the background, and shouted, finally. But not everyone was happy with the news. When Victoria learned of the engagement, through high society gossips, lovers of scandalous stories, she flew into a rage. He's gone crazy, she told Marina. Proposing to a woman after 3 months of relationship. After everything I've shown him, what do you want to do? Victoria smiled, but it was a dangerous smile. If Alexander wants this woman, he'll have her, but I'm going to make sure he sees who she really is. How? Carlos Mendoza still lives in the city, and he has a wife who's very interested in hearing that her husband's ex-mistress is about to marry a millionaire. Marina blinked. Are you going to pour? I'm going to make Sarah's past come back to haunt her, and when that happens, Alexander will realize I was right from the beginning. Jessica was more excited than the bride herself. When Sarah told her about the proposal, she screamed so loud the neighbors banged on the wall. I can't believe it, my best friend is marrying a millionaire. Jessica, it's not about the money. I know it's not. But let's face it, it won't hurt to never have to worry about the electric bill again. Sarah laughed. It was good to have Jessica to balance all the tension with lightness. Will you be my maid of honor? I'm going to be your maid of honor, and we're going to have the biggest wedding this town has ever seen. Actually, we want something simple. Simple? Sarah, you're marrying Alexander Blackwood. Simple doesn't exist in his vocabulary. And Jessica was right. When Alexander started planning the wedding, Sarah quickly realized that their ideas of simple were very different. 300 guests is intimate by my social class standards, he explained, while Sarah almost fainted looking at the list. Alexander, I don't know 300 people in the whole world. Don't worry, most are business contacts and distant relatives. What about my family? My friends. Of course. How many people do you want to invite? Sarah thought. About 20. Alexander stopped writing. 20? Is that too many? No, it's perfect. He smiled. Your 20 people are going to be the most important at the party. Wedding planning brought other challenges. Sarah had to learn protocol for receiving the wives of Alexander's business partners. She had to choose between 15 different types of flowers for decoration. She only wanted jasmine, but apparently it wasn't sophisticated enough. And she had to accept that her simple suggestion to make her own cake was received with horror by the event planner. You're going to make your own cake? Asked Madame Dubois, the renowned planner Alexander had hired. But that's not done. Why not?
I like to cook.
Dear, when you marry a Blackwood, there are certain expectations. Sarah looked at Alexander, who was dancing with Tommy in the middle of the dance floor, both laughing as if they were the only ones in the world. I still can't believe this is real. Yes, it is, and you deserve every second of happiness. 6 months later, Sarah was in the kitchen of her new home, a mansion that Alexander had insisted on buying, but which she had decorated with her personal touch, mixing luxury with the comfort she brought from her simple world. When Tommy came running from school, Sarah, I got an A on my science test. Congratulations, my love. She hugged him. Should we celebrate by making cupcakes? Can I help? Of course you can. While they baked together, Sarah reflected on how her life had changed. She still worked at the community center, now as a coordinator, thanks to an anonymous donation that had allowed them to expand services. Alexander had insisted she didn't need to work, but she explained that helping people was part of her identity. And if you want to help people, I can create a foundation, he had offered. Can I have both? She asked. The work that makes me happy, and the foundation that can help more people. That's how their marriage worked. She made him more human, more connected to the real world. He gave her the resources to expand her ability to help others. Sarah, Tommy said, licking his spoon of batter, can I tell you a secret? Of course. Sometimes I dream about Mom, and she always tells me she's happy because you take care of me. Sarah felt her eyes fill with tears. Did she really say that?
Yes.
And she said you're an angel that God sent to take care of us. Sarah hugged the boy. I'm the lucky one to have you both. When Alexander came home from work that afternoon, he found Sarah in the garden, watering her jasmine bushes. She had insisted on planting an entire garden with just them. How was your day? He asked, hugging her from behind. Perfect. And yours? Much better now that I'm home. They stayed there, embracing, watching Tommy play with the dog that Sarah had convinced Alexander to adopt. You know what? Alexander said. I was thinking, that's dangerous. He laughed. I was thinking that maybe it's time to give Tommy a little brother or sister. Sarah turned in his arms. Really? Would that be crazy? It would be perfect. They kissed there in the jasmine-scented garden, while the sun set and Tommy called for them to come see the new trick he had taught the dog. Did you like this love story? Then leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I love telling stories that prove that true love can overcome any obstacle. Have you ever lived a great love story? Comment below. Epilogue. 2 years later, Sarah was in the maternity ward, holding Emma Jessica Blackwood Mitchell in her arms. Named after Alexander's first wife and Sarah's best friend. She was a girl with blue eyes like her father, and dark hair like her mother. She's perfect, Alexander said with tears in his eyes. Just like her brother, Sarah said, looking at Tommy, who was completely smitten with his little sister. Can I hold her? Of course. But, be careful. Tommy held his sister with all the gentleness in the world. Hello, Emma. I'm your big brother, and I'll always protect you. Sarah and Alexander looked at each other, knowing they were witnessing the beginning of a bond that would last a lifetime. You know, Alexander said, sometimes I think about what would have happened if you hadn't saved Tommy that day. Don't think about that. But I do, and I thank you every day for having the courage to jump into that water. It wasn't courage. It was instinct. It was love. You loved an unknown child enough to risk your life for him. Sarah smiled. And that unknown child brought me the family I had always dreamed of. That night, when they returned home, a surprise awaited them. Jessica had organized a welcome party for Emma, with all of Sarah's friends and acquaintances. There was Mrs. Rose from the cafe, Father Miguel, her colleagues from the community center, neighbors from Sarah's old neighborhood. It was a perfect mix of the two worlds that had now become one. Look, Jessica said. The girl who lived in a one-bedroom apartment now has a beautiful family in a mansion. It's not the mansion that makes me happy, Sarah said, looking at Alexander playing with Tommy and holding Emma. It's them. I know. But let's be honest, the mansion doesn't hurt, Sarah laughed. It really doesn't. Later, when everyone had gone and the children were sleeping, Sarah and Alexander sat on the balcony, looking at the stars. What are you thinking about? He asked. I'm thinking that 4 years ago I was a lonely woman who thought I would never have a family, and today I have everything I ever dreamed of. And I'm thinking that 4 years ago I was a bitter man who thought I would never be happy again, and today I can't imagine life without you. Do you believe in destiny? I do now. There must be some higher force that made our paths cross in that park. Or maybe, Sarah said, destiny is just another word for two people who decide to fight for love, even when everything seems impossible. Maybe you're right. Alexander took her hand, where the simple gold ring she had chosen shone. No huge diamonds, just a pure symbol of their love. Sarah?
Yes?
Thank you. For what? For saving me. Not just Tommy that day in the park, but me too. You saved my ability to love. Sarah turned to him. And you saved me from loneliness. You gave me a family. You showed me that I'm worthy of being loved. They kissed there, on the balcony of the house where they were raising their children, where they were building memories, where they lived proof that sometimes fairy tales exist in real life. And here ends our story. Sarah Mitchell, the humble woman who saved a child without knowing she would change her destiny forever. Because sometimes a simple gesture of kindness is enough for two lives to become one. If you believe in the power of true love, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our stories. And don't forget to share in the comments what was the simplest gesture that changed your life. Until next time, the end.